Welcome to Aurora English, the podcast where we explore big ideas in clear, fun English. I'm William, your serious host who loves facts and details. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most mind-blowing achievements in human history: how astronauts managed to reach the International Space Station exactly, without missing it by even 1 meter in any direction. We're going to walk through every single step from the countdown on Earth all the way to the moment the hatch opens and the crew floats inside. And we'll explain every technical term, every piece of space slang, so that by the end, you'll feel like you could almost do it yourself. Well, almost.
And I'm Sophia, the fun one, who asks all the silly questions and makes everything exciting. Hi, everyone. William, seriously, when I was a kid, I thought astronauts just pointed the rocket up, pressed a big red button that said space, and whoosh, 10 minutes later, they're waving at the camera on the ISS while drinking floating coffee. Turns out it's way more complicated than that, right? Like, how do you even find something that's zooming around the planet 17 times a day?
Today, we're talking about one of the coolest things humans do: how astronauts reach the International Space Station exactly, not 1 meter too far, not 1 meter too short. Sophia, do you think they just drive there with GPS?
Normal car GPS would be completely useless up there because the station is moving at roughly 27,600 kilometers per hour, or about 7.66 kilometers every single second. To give you an idea, that's faster than a bullet from a rifle. The ISS is about the size of an American football field if you include the solar panels, roughly 109 meters long, and it's flying in a circle around Earth at an altitude of approximately 400 kilometers, give or take a few kilometers, because the orbit isn't perfectly round. That speed we mentioned, 27,600 kilometers per hour, is called orbital velocity. In simple words, it's the exact speed something has to travel horizontally at that height, so that gravity pulls it down at the same rate. The curve of the Earth falls away beneath it. If you go slower, you fall back to Earth. If you go faster, you fly away into deep space. So astronauts don't just fly up, like an airplane climbing to 10 kilometers and then leveling off. They have to curve sideways, chase the station, catch up to its incredible speed, and then gently dock, which means connect two spacecraft together while both are moving at nearly 8 kilometers per second.
I wish! In 400 kilometers, turn left at the moon. No way! But seriously, William, how do they hit something the size of a football field that's moving at 28,000 kilometers per hour? That's insane! That's like standing in New York, throwing a basketball all the way to Los Angeles, and having it swish perfectly into a hoop that itself is racing around a track at 17,500 miles per hour. Or imagine trying to jump from one bullet train to another bullet train while both are going full speed and one is 400 kilometers above your head. And if you miss by just a little bit, boom! Either you bounce off or you keep going forever into empty space. It sounds impossible. Oh, and by the way, swish means the ball goes through the net without touching the rim. Perfect shot. And boom here means a disaster, like an explosion or a very bad crash. Perfect example, and you're actually not far off. The ISS, we usually shorten International Space Station to ISS, orbits Earth at about 400 kilometers altitude, and it completes one full lap, one orbit around the planet every 90 minutes, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. That speed is called orbital velocity, and it's the magic number that keeps the station in a stable orbit. To reach it, astronauts don't fly straight up like an airplane that climbs to 10 kilometers and then levels off. They have to fly into a curved path, enter orbit themselves, chase the ISS like a police car chasing its speeding vehicle, gradually get closer over many hours, match its exact speed and direction, and then perform what we call a gentle docking maneuver. The whole process is planned months or even years in advance, And the computers on the ground and in space do millions of calculations to make sure everything lines up perfectly. One tiny mistake in timing or direction, and the spacecraft could end up hundreds of kilometers away with no way to catch up without using huge amounts of extra fuel.
Chase it? Like a space car chase? This is Houston. Suspect is moving at Mach 23. Mach 23 means 23 times the speed of sound. Sound travels about 1,200 kilometers per hour in the air. So Mach 23 is absolutely screaming fast. Houston, by the way, is the Mission Control Center in Texas, where most American space flights are managed. They really do say things like, "Houston, we have a problem," in real life, although that exact line became famous from a movie. So the rocket is basically playing the longest, fastest game of tag in history?
Exactly like a high-speed chase, but in space, and everything has to be predicted hours or even days ahead because you can't just hit the brakes or turn the steering wheel quickly. The rocket doesn't aim at where the ISS is at launch time. It aims at where the ISS will be many hours later when the spacecraft finally arrives. This planned meeting in orbit is called a rendezvous. It's a French word that literally means to present yourself, or a planned meeting. In everyday life, you might say, "Let's have a rendezvous at the cafe at 7 p.m." In space, it means two objects that weigh tons, moving faster than any bullet, arriving at the exact same point in the emptiness of space at the exact same second, with almost zero relative speed between them. The mathematics behind rendezvous was first worked out in the 1960s for the Gemini program, and we still use the same basic ideas today. There are different types, co-elliptic rendezvous, glide slope rendezvous, and others, but they all boil down to getting a lower, slower orbit to catch up to a higher, faster one, because in orbit, strangely enough, higher orbits are actually slower.
Rendezvous. So it's like a blind date in orbit? Hey, ISS, swipe right. Swipe right is what you do on dating apps when you like someone's picture and hope they like you back too. And blind date means you've never met the person before, so you have no idea if it's going to work out or be a total disaster. I guess in space, the disaster version is drifting away forever or smashing into each other at 50,000 kilometers per hour relative speed. Yikes! That phrase, yikes, just means, oh no, that's scary. So yeah, space blind date with extremely high stakes.
Haha, yes, but with billion-dollar hardware. Let's break it down step by step. First, the astronauts launch on a rocket, usually a Russian Soyuz, or now the American SpaceX Crew Dragon, or sometimes Boeing Starliner. When we say billion-dollar hardware, we're talking about equipment and vehicles that cost hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars to build and operate. For example, the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule alone costs around $55 million per seat for NASA missions, and the whole launch can run into the hundreds of millions. Breaking it down step by step means we'll explain the process in small, easy-to-follow parts, like following a recipe where you add one ingredient at a time. The Soyuz has been around since the 1960s, designed by the Soviet Union and now operated by Russia. It's incredibly reliable, having flown hundreds of missions without a fatal accident in decades. The SpaceX Crew Dragon is a newer spacecraft developed by Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, and it's designed for reusability, meaning parts of it can be used multiple times to save money, kind of like how you reuse a shopping bag instead of buying a new one every time. The Boeing Starliner is another American option built by the aerospace giant Boeing, and it's meant to provide redundancy. That word means having a backup plan or extra options, so if one fails, you have another, like carrying two sets of keys in case you lose one. These rockets don't just blast off any time. The launch is carefully timed because space is all about precision. Once the rocket ignites its engines, ignite means to start burning, like lighting a match, it climbs through the atmosphere, shedding stages along the way. The atmosphere is the layer of air around Earth, getting thinner as you go up, and shedding stages means dropping empty fuel tanks to make the rocket lighter, similar to a runner taking off heavy clothes to go faster. After about 8 to 10 minutes, the spacecraft separates from the rocket and enters orbit, but not the same orbit as the ISS right away. The ISS is orbiting at around 400 kilometers, but the initial orbit for the spacecraft is lower, saying 200 to 250 kilometers, to allow for adjustments. This lower orbit is faster in a way because in orbital mechanics, that's the science of how things move in space under gravity, objects in lower orbits actually travel faster to stay up, counterintuitively. Counterintuitively means against what you might expect. For example, you might think higher means faster, but in orbits, it's the opposite. So the spacecraft uses this to catch up, like a race car on the inside track, lapping the one on the outside.
Soyuz is the old reliable Russian one, right? Looks like a big gumdrop with solar wings. Gumdrop is a type of candy that's round and chewy, so I'm comparing the Soyuz capsule's shape to that. It's bulbous and rounded at the bottom for re-entry with a narrower top. Solar wings are the solar panels that unfold like bird wings to capture sunlight and turn it into electricity for the spacecraft's systems, just like how solar panels on a house roof power lights and appliances. And old reliable is a slang phrase, meaning something that's been around a long time and you can always count on it, like an old car that never breaks down or a trusty friend who always shows up. For instance, if your grandma's recipe for cookies always turns out perfect, you'd call it old reliable. The Soyuz has carried astronauts to space stations since the days of Mir in the 1980s and 1990s, and now it's the workhorse for the ISS. Workhorse means a reliable, hard-working machine or animal, like a horse that pulls the plow all day without complaint. Compared to the newer ones, it might look a bit dated, but it's proven its worth over and over again.
Exactly. Crew Dragon looks more modern, like a sleek white egg. Sleek means smooth and stylish, designed for efficiency, like a sports car that's aerodynamic to cut through the air with less resistance. In space, it's about looking futuristic and being packed with advanced tech. The white color is actually a thermal coating to protect against the extreme temperatures in space, where it can be boiling hot in sunlight and freezing cold in shadow. Anyway, when the rocket launches, the ISS is already thousands of kilometers ahead in its orbit. At the moment of liftoff, that's when the rocket leaves the ground, propelled by massive flames from its engines, the ISS could be over another continent entirely, zipping along at that orbital velocity we talked about earlier. This distance isn't fixed. It depends on the launch site. For example, launches from Kazakhstan for Soyuz put the ISS about 4,000 kilometers ahead, while from Florida, for American rockets, it might be different based on the Earth rotation. Earth's rotation means the planet is spinning, which gives a boost to launches near the equator, like a slingshot effect. Slingshot is when you pull back a rubber band and let it go to fling something forward. So the spacecraft has to play catch-up from the get-go. From the get-go is a slang meaning right from the start, like jumping into a race as soon as the gun fires.
So the station is basically running away from them? Running away implies escaping or fleeing, like a kid hiding from chores, but here it's not intentional. It's just the physics of orbit making the ISS move continuously. Is there any way they could launch when the ISS is right overhead to make it easier? Overhead means directly above, like a plane flying over your house.
Not running away, it's just orbiting so fast that by the time the rocket gets to space, the ISS has moved far along its path. The rocket has to launch at exactly the right moment. This moment is called the launch window. It's usually only a few seconds long. A launch window is a very specific time period when all the conditions are perfect for the mission to succeed, not just the position of the ISS, but also weather on the ground, solar activity that could affect electronics, and even the alignment of backup landing sites in case of emergency. For ISS missions, the window is instantaneous for the most efficient path, meaning 0 seconds wide, ideally. But in practice, they allow a few seconds of flexibility. If you miss it, you might have to wait for the next orbit, which could be 90 minutes later. But often the next good window is the next day, or even weeks later because of fuel and scheduling. It's like trying to board a merry-go-round that's spinning fast. You have to jump on at just the right spot, or you'll miss and have to wait for it to come around again.
A few seconds? If they're late by 10 seconds, do they miss the whole thing? Late by 10 seconds sounds tiny, but in space terms, at 28,000 kilometers per hour, 10 seconds means the ISS has moved about 77 kilometers further.
That's like the distance from one city to another. So, yeah, that could throw everything off. Throw everything off means disrupt the plan completely, like spilling paint on a canvas and ruining the picture.
Not completely, but it gets much harder and uses way more fuel. Think of it like catching a super fast train. If you arrive at the station when the train is already leaving, you have to sprint and jump. In space, sprinting means burning a lot of fuel to speed up and catch it faster. Fuel is precious in space. Precious means very valuable and limited, like gold or water in a desert. Spacecraft carry only so much propellant, which is the fuel for thrusters, so wasting it on corrections means less for emergencies or the return trip. In orbital terms, if you're late, your phasing angle, that's the angular difference in position around the orbit, is wrong, so you might need extra burns to adjust. A burn is when you fire the engines for a short time to change velocity. Velocity is speed in a specific direction, not just how fast, but where you're going. So instead of a nice, efficient 2-burn rendezvous, you might need 4 or 5, eating up delta V. Delta V is space jargon for change in velocity, measured in meters per second. It's like your budget for maneuvers. Run out and you're stuck. For example, the Soyuz has about 400 meters per second of delta V available, so you don't want to squander it. Squander means waste carelessly, like spending all your allowance on candy in one day.
So timing is everything. Got it. What happens after launch? After launch, that's post-liftoff when the rocket has cleared the tower and is ascending. Ascending means going up, like climbing stairs. Do they immediately start chasing, or is there a chill period?
The rocket puts the spacecraft into a lower orbit first, maybe 200 kilometers up. That's called the initial parking orbit. From there, the spacecraft slowly raises its orbit to catch up with the ISS. It's like taking a slower highway lane and then gradually moving into the fast lane. A parking orbit is a temporary orbit where the spacecraft coasts. Coasts means moves without power, like a bike rolling downhill, to check systems and wait for the right moment to maneuver. At 200 kilometers, the orbital period is shorter, about 88 minutes for a lap versus 90 for the ISS. So over time, the spacecraft laps the ISS from below. Laps means overtakes in a circle, like in a racetrack. To raise the orbit, they perform a Hohmann transfer. Hohmann transfer is an efficient way to change orbits using 2 burns, one to ellipticalize the orbit, make it oval-shaped, and another at the high point to circularize it again at the new altitude. Elliptical means egg-shaped, not round. This is fuel efficient because it uses gravity to do some of the work. Gradually, over several orbits, they close the gap. The gap is the distance between them, which starts at thousands of kilometers and shrinks to hundreds, then tens. Sensors like GPS, but space GPS is augmented with ground tracking, help monitor position. Augmented means improved or added to, like adding cheese to a burger. Eventually, when they're in the same orbital plane means the flat path around Earth, like a hula hoop, and close enough, they enter the rendezvous phase we discussed earlier. This whole process can take from 6 hours for a fast rendezvous, like recent Soyuz missions, to 2 or 3 days for more conservative approaches, allowing time for checks and aborts if needed. Abort means cancel the mission safely, like hitting the emergency brake. Throughout, the crew monitors everything, but computers do most of the heavy lifting. Heavy lifting is slang for the hard work, like when friends help move furniture and one does the tough parts. So step by step, it's launch, parking orbit, phasing burns, approach, and dock, all calculated to the meter.
I love that. Space highways with lanes. When you say it's like taking a slower highway lane and then gradually moving into the fast lane, it really paints a picture in my mind of these invisible roads in the sky where spacecraft zip along at different speeds depending on how high they are. Highways with lanes is a great metaphor. A metaphor means a way of describing something by comparing it to something else that's familiar, like saying time is a thief to mean it steals moments from us without us noticing. In everyday life, on a real highway, the slow lane is for trucks and cautious drivers, and the fast lane is for those in a hurry, and you merge carefully to avoid accidents. In space, it's similar, but with orbits. Lower orbits are like the fast lane in terms of catching up, because paradoxically, things move faster closer to Earth to counteract the stronger gravity pull.
paradoxically means in a way that seems contradictory but is true. For example, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. So yeah, imagining space as a multi-lane highway helps demystify. Demystify means to make something less mysterious, like explaining magic tricks so they're not scary anymore. The whole process of orbital mechanics, which is the science of how objects move under gravity in space, like planets orbiting the sun or satellites around Earth.
Yes, the key maneuver is called the phasing orbit. The spacecraft does several engine burns, short bursts of the thrusters, to raise its orbit step by step. Each burn makes the spacecraft go a little higher and faster. A maneuver in this context is a planned movement or action to change position or speed, like a chess move where you position your piece strategically. The phasing orbit is specifically designed to adjust the spacecraft's position relative to the ISS over time. Phasing comes from phases like the moon's phases, meaning getting in sync or aligned properly. For instance, if two clocks are out of sync, meaning not showing the same time, you adjust one to match the other. In space, it's about matching orbits. Engine burns are those moments when the rockets fire up briefly. A burst is a short, intense release like a burst of laughter or a burst of speed in a race. Thrusters are those attitude control systems, often using hydrazine or other propellants, and burns can last from seconds to minutes. For example, on the space shuttle, thrusters were used for docking, and now on modern craft, they're computer controlled for precision.
Perfect definition. After a few hours, or sometimes 2 days, Soyuz takes about 6 hours now. Crew Dragon can do it in 6 to 24 hours. The spacecraft gets very close to the ISS, maybe a few hundred meters.
A few hours or 2 days depends on the rendezvous profile. A profile is like a plan or method, such as a fast-track rendezvous versus a standard one. The Soyuz, being Russian, has optimized to 6 hours with 3 orbits, meaning they circle Earth 3 times during the chase. Crew Dragon from SpaceX offers flexibility based on mission needs, like crew comfort or testing. Getting very close means entering the vicinity. Vicinity means nearby area like the neighborhood around your house. A few hundred meters is about the length of a couple of football fields. At that point, relative speed is reduced to meters per second, not kilometers. This phase transitions from far-field to near-field operations where human oversight increases. Oversight means supervision, like a teacher watching students during a test.
Okay, now the scary part. How did they stop exactly at the door without crashing?
The scary part means the most tense or dangerous moment, like the climax in a horror movie where your heart races. Stop exactly at the door being the docking port, a hatch where spacecraft connect. Without crashing implies avoiding collision, which in space could be catastrophic. Catastrophic means disastrous, like a major accident causing loss of life or equipment, like a plane crash.
This part is called proximity operations, or ProxOps. The spacecraft switches to automatic or manual control using very precise sensors: lasers, radar, cameras, and star trackers. Proximity operations refer to activities when spacecraft are close, say within a few kilometers. ProxOps is shorthand, like abbreviating operations to ops in military or tech slang. Automatic control means computers handle it, like autopilot on a plane. Manual means astronauts take over with joysticks. Sensors are devices that detect information. Lasers measure distance by timing light bounces. Radar uses radio waves similarly. Cameras provide visual feeds, and star trackers will explain next. Precise means accurate to tiny degrees. Crucial because at orbital speeds, errors amplify quickly.
Star trackers? Like the spacecraft looks at stars to know where it is?
Star trackers are instruments that image the sky and match patterns to a star catalog. Catalog means a database, like a library book list. To know where it is actually means determining attitude or orientation, not position. Position comes from other systems like GPS.
Exactly. Stars don't move relative to each other, so by looking at star patterns, the spacecraft knows its exact orientation, which way is up, down, left, right. Relative to each other means from our perspective, stars appear fixed. In reality, they move, but very slowly over millennia. Orientation is the direction the spacecraft is facing, essential for pointing antennas or solar panels. For example, if you're lost in the woods, you use the North Star to find direction. Star trackers do that digitally with accuracy to arc seconds. An arc second is 1/3600th of a degree, tiny like a coin seen from kilometers away.
That's so smart. Nature's GPS. So smart means cleverly designed, using natural elements ingeniously. Nature's GPS. GPS is Global Positioning System, satellites that tell your phone's location. Here, stars act as a natural version, unchanging beacons in the sky. Beacons are guiding lights, like a lighthouse for ships.
Now, the final approach uses something called the Kerr system on Soyuz, or the Dragon uses LiDAR and thermal cameras. They measure distance and speed down to centimeters and millimeters per second. Final approach is the last phase, like a plane lining up for landing. Kerr's is a Russian radio-based system that guides by sending signals between ISS and spacecraft. LiDAR will define next. Thermal cameras detect heat signatures, useful for identifying parts in the darkest space. Measured down to centimeters, the centimeter is about the width of a fingernail, and millimeters per second, a millimeter is a tenth of that. Per second is very slow, like watching paint dry.
LiDAR is like radar, but with laser light, right? Bounces lasers off the station to measure distance. LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. Radar is radio detection and ranging. Bounces means reflects, like a ball off a wall. For example, self-driving cars use LiDAR to map surroundings.
Yes. When they're about 300 meters away, they start the final approach at very slow speed, slower than walking, usually 10 to 20 centimeters per second. 300 meters is roughly 3 football fields. Very slow speed means relative velocity, since both are moving fast absolutely, but slow to each other. Slower than walking. Walking is about 1.4 meters per second. 10 to 20 centimeters per second is 0.1 to 0.2 meters per second, like a tortoise pace.
That's crazy slow, like a snail in space. Crazy slow means unbelievably sluggish, emphasizing the contrast to orbital speeds. Like a snail, snails move at about 1 millimeter per second, so similar. In space adds humor, imagining a snail floating.
Exactly. The closer they get, the slower they go. At 10 meters, it's just a few centimeters per second. The spacecraft has to match the ISS speed exactly, 7.66 kilometers per second, and be perfectly aligned. The closer they get means as distance decreases, slower to allow for corrections. At 10 meters, about the length of a bus. Match exactly means relative speed 0. 7.66 kilometers per second is the orbital speed. Perfectly aligned means axes matched. Roll, pitch, and yaw like airplane controls.
And if they're even a tiny bit off?
A tiny bit off means slightly misaligned or too fast or slow. Even means if only, emphasizing minimal error.
There are safety rules. If anything looks wrong, they do a hold or even back away and try again later. There's something called the keep-out sphere, an imaginary bubble 200 meters around the ISS. Nothing is allowed inside without permission. Safety rules are protocols to prevent accidents, like traffic loss. Looks wrong means sensors detect anomalies. Anomaly means irregularity, like a weird noise in your car. A hold is pausing the approach, staying at a safe distance. Back away means reverse thrusters to increase distance. Try again later could be after an orbit or two. Keep-out sphere is a virtual boundary 200 meters radius. Radius means from center to edge, like a ball's radius. Imaginary bubble visualizes it as a protective zone. Without permission means cleared by mission control, is to avoid collisions with other objects or during operations. For example, during spacewalks, the sphere expands. This ensures the ISS, a $150 billion asset with crew aboard, stays safe.
Like a VIP zone at a concert. You know that super exclusive area right in front of the stage where only celebrities or people with special passes can go? Nobody else is allowed inside or security will stop you immediately. VIP stands for Very Important Person, and in space, the Keep Out sphere is exactly that, a 200-meter invisible bubble around the ISS that says, Authorized Spacecraft Only. If something random like space junk or an unapproved satellite drifts in there, alarms go off and the station can even do an avoidance maneuver. That means firing its own engines to dodge out of the way, like swerving your car to miss a deer on the road. So yeah, the ISS has the best bouncers in the universe.
Perfect analogy. When they're finally lined up, meaning every axis is perfectly matched and their relative speed is almost zero, the spacecraft gently touches the docking port. The docking port is the actual door on the ISS, a round opening about 70 centimeters wide, with all the electrical connectors, fuel lines if needed, and mechanical locks. On the ISS side, there's a soft capture ring with latches. Think of it like a big metal flower that opens slightly. The moment the probe or the cone on the visiting spacecraft touches this ring, pyrotechnic devices or small motors triggers 12 soft capture latches that snap closed. Snap closed means they grab instantly, like when you close a seatbelt and it clicks. It's called soft capture because it's gentle. It absorbs the tiny remaining energy so nothing bends or breaks. After that, handshake is a friendly greeting where two people hold hands and shake, but here it means the first safe connection. The mechanism slowly pulls the two vehicles together over the next few minutes. Then, 12 big hooks, 3 groups of 4, swing in and lock everything rigid. That's called hard dock or hard mate. Once those hooks are closed, the two spacecraft become one single object, flying at 28,000 kilometers per hour. The whole process from first contact to hard dock usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and the forces are kept below what a human could push with one finger. Seriously, less than 100 newtons, which is like the weight of an apple in your hand.
So it's not like plugging in a USB the first time. It actually helps you.
Everyone knows that USB struggle. You try to plug it in, it's upside down. You flip it, still wrong, flip it again, and only on the third try it finally slides in. That's the joke. USB third time law. Docking in space is the complete opposite. The system is designed to guide you in even if you're not perfect. There are guide pedals and cones that physically steer the probe into the right spot if you're a little sideways. It's more like those magnetic charging cables on some laptops. You just bring it close and whoosh, it jumps into place perfectly every time. Or imagine trying to park a huge truck with a helpful friend who grabs the bumper and pulls you exactly where you need to be. That's soft capture for you.
Much better than USB, it's designed to work even if you're a little off-center. There's a tolerance of about 10 to 15 centimeters and a few degrees of angle. Tolerance means how much error the system can accept and still work perfectly. 10 to 15 centimeters is about the width of a dinner plate. A few degrees is like tilting your phone slightly when you take a selfie. The Russian system is called probe and drogue. The spacecraft has a long probe like a spear, and the ISS has a drogue, which is a funneled-shaped receiver that guides the probe in. The American system on Crew Dragon and the ISS is called the International Docking Adapter Standard, or IDSS, and it uses something called the soft capture mechanism with guide pedals. Pedals are like flower petals that open and close. Even if the spacecraft is coming in at a slight angle or shifted sideways, those pedals and the cone shape funnel everything into alignment. It's incredibly forgiving. Forgiving means it doesn't punish small mistakes, like a teacher who gives you a second chance if you mess up one question on a test.
Wow, so they can be a little drunk and still dock. I'm totally joking, of course. Astronauts are super professional and never drink alcohol before or during missions. But the joke is that the docking system is so easy and helpful that even someone a tiny bit clumsy could do it. A little drunk is an expression meaning slightly uncoordinated or wobbly, like after one glass of wine when you still walk straight, but everything feels a bit looser. In everyday English, we say things like, I was so tired I felt drunk, to mean not perfectly sharp. So yeah, the docking hardware basically holds your hand the whole way.
No alcohol in space. Alcohol is strictly forbidden on the ISS. In fact, the only alcohol allowed is in scientific experiments sealed in containers. But yes, the system is very forgiving. Once hard dock is complete, meaning all 12 hooks are locked and the seals are tight, the crew and mission control run a series of checks. First, they pressurize the vestibule. The vestibule is the small tunnel area between the two hatches, like the entrance hallway of a house. They check for leaks using pressure sensors. A leak would mean air escaping into space, which is dangerous because the ISS only has a limited amount of air. If everything is good, they equalize pressure, meaning they make the air pressure the same on both sides so the hatch opens easily without a big whoosh of air. Then, finally, someone turns the handle, pushes the hatch open, and the new crew floats through while the station crew waits with cameras and big smiles. Total time from launch to hatch open, about 6 to 30 hours, depending on the vehicle. The fastest ever was a Soyuz in 2013 that took just under 6 hours, 3 orbits, and done. Modern Crew Dragon flights often aim for around 18 to 24 hours to give the crew time to rest and eat properly after the intense launch.
That's wild. So it's not like in movies where they blast off and 10 minutes later, they're drinking coffee on the ISS? Wild here means unbelievable or crazy in a fun way. Like when your friend tells you an amazing story and you say, "That's wild." Movies love to show dramatic launches and then cut immediately to astronauts already inside the station high-fiving. In reality, it's a long, slow, nail-biting process, full of checklists and waiting. Nail-biting means so tense that you bite your fingernails from nervousness. Real astronauts spend hours strapped in, floating in their seats, eating space food from pouches and watching computer screens while mission control in Houston, Moscow, or Munich talks them through every step.
Exactly. Movies lie. Real spaceflight is slow, precise, and full of waiting. But when that hatch opens and they float in, that's one of the best moments in human spaceflight. You can watch the videos online. The new arrivals come through head first or feet first, tumbling slowly in zero gravity, and the station crew catches them with hugs and floating cameras. There's always laughter, tears sometimes, and someone usually has a welcome sign or national flags. It's the moment when months or years of training pay off. Pay off means finally give the reward after hard work, like studying all semester and then acing the exam. It's humanity's way of saying, we did it again. We reached our outpost in space.
I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Goosebumps are those little bumps on your skin when you're cold or emotionally moved, like when you hear your favorite song live or see an incredible sunset. So, next time someone says, just go to the space station, we can say, sure, let me just perfectly time my 28,000 kilometer per hour snail speed laser guided cosmic handshake. That sentence is packed with everything we learned. 28,000 kilometers per hour is the orbital speed. Snail speed is the final approach. Laser guided is the LiDAR and curse. And cosmic handshake is the soft capture. It's basically the most epic way to describe a space hug ever.
That's the most accurate summary ever. You've managed to fit the entire 6 to 30-hour ballet of orbital mechanics into one beautiful, ridiculous sentence. I think that's officially the best description of space docking in history.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Aurora English. If you learned new words today like rendezvous, thruster brood, docking, orbital velocity, keep out sphere, soft capture, hard dock, tolerance, vestibule, or goosebumps, awesome. Awesome means fantastic or wonderful. Try using them this week. Tell your friends our pizza rendezvous was perfect, or the docking of that burger into my mouth had zero tolerance error. Use them and impress your friends. Impress means make them think, wow, you're smart.
See you next time when we explain something amazing in simple English. Whether it's black holes, quantum physics, or why cats always land on their feet, we'll make it fun and clear.
Bye-bye from space. Well, almost. We're actually on Earth recording this, but our hearts are floating up there with the astronauts.